The man's eyes locked onto his glass, the amber liquid swirling gently. He wasn't staring at the drink. No. His focus was on something far more personal. Something painful. Something that made his jaw tighten as the bartender slid the glass across the counter. "Another one, Jack?" the bartender asked casually. The man nodded, but didn't speak. His silence wasn't just from exhaustion. It was frustration. The frustration of being seen as just another face in the crowd. The frustration of being ignored, dismissed, as though he were nobody. But tonight, that would change. Tonight, he was going to test something. As he sipped the drink, a waitress in a neat black uniform approached. Her name was Emma, a young woman who had worked at the Velvet Lounge for nearly 3 years. She had seen all kinds of customers, from the rich and famous to the down-and-out regulars. But there was something about Jack that made her pause, made her hesitate. "Can I get you something else?" she asked, her voice friendly but professional. He glanced up, eyes sharp, but with a tinge of something deeper, something she couldn't quite place. "No," he replied, almost too quickly. "I'm fine, just waiting." Emma raised an eyebrow, sensing the tension in his voice. She decided to let it go. "All right, let me know if you change your mind," she said, about to turn away. Then the words escaped him before he could stop them. "I don't even know why I'm here," he muttered. Emma stopped. He chuckled bitterly, swirling his drink once more. "Can't afford to be here. Can't afford to leave either." Emma frowned, unsure whether he was speaking to her or to himself. But she was curious, and curiosity often led to trouble at the Velvet Lounge. She leaned slightly toward him, softening her expression. "You all right?" Jack looked up, his eyes no longer sharp, but distant. "Just can't shake the feeling that I'm stuck. Everyone around here acts like they have it all together. But I'm just stuck." Emma wasn't sure what to make of his words, but she recognized that feeling. It was a feeling she had come to know well over the years, being on the outside, watching the world move past without ever truly being a part of it. Then, just as she turned to walk away, a strange thing happened. Jack did something that made her pause. He placed a crumpled $100 bill on the counter, enough to cover his tab, and slid it toward her. Her heart sank. It wasn't the money that struck her. It was the way he did it. He slid the bill like it was just another piece of paper and then slumped into his seat. Was he really that broke? Or was this all an act? Before she could process her thoughts, Jack turned his gaze back to his drink, his face hardening once more. But as she stared at the crumpled bill, a thought flickered through her mind. What if this was a test? Suddenly, the weight of the situation hit her. It wasn't just a typical interaction. There was something bigger at play here, something more dangerous, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. But as Jack continued to sink into his quiet contemplation, Emma's instincts told her one thing. This wasn't over. So, what happens next? Before you jump to conclusions, hit that subscribe button and tell us where you're watching from. It's late, but we've got more surprises in store. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think is going on. Is Jack really broke? Or is there more to this story than meets the eye? Stay tuned. It all started on that rainy Tuesday when Emma first noticed him. Jack, a man who didn't look like he belonged in the upscale Velvet Lounge, dressed in clothes that seemed out of place, sitting in a seat meant for someone who was far more comfortable in their own skin. He wasn't the type to stand out in a crowd, but there was something about him. He had a presence, a mystery that piqued her curiosity from the moment he stepped through the door. But that night, he wasn't just any man. He was about to challenge everything she knew about people, life, and maybe even herself. It was a quiet evening, one of those nights when the bar was barely half full, and the air felt thick with the smell of expensive whiskey and wood polish. Emma was serving a couple of regulars when she noticed Jack again. He was sitting alone, his drink untouched, staring into the empty space ahead of him as if the world didn't matter anymore, as if he didn't belong. Her curiosity was beginning to creep in. She couldn't understand why someone who looked so ordinary would choose to sit in a high-end bar like this, surrounded by the city's elite. But it wasn't her place to question it. She had enough to worry about. The rent was coming up, and her shift was far from over. But there was something about Jack. As the evening wore on, he continued to sit there, not speaking, not interacting with anyone. But every time Emma caught a glance of him, she noticed how he seemed disconnected, like he was lost in thought, struggling with something no one else could see. It was a look she recognized well. She'd seen it in the eyes of so many people who came in, those who were pretending, hiding behind a mask, pretending they were okay when they were far from it. Jack's silence made Emma wonder. Could he be one of those people who was just playing a part, pretending to be something he wasn't? But she couldn't understand why he would do that. He wasn't wearing a suit like most of the men who came in, flaunting their wealth. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. No, he was the complete opposite. He seemed defeated, almost as if he had given up trying. It was something she couldn't shake. Then, just as Emma was about to serve another drink, Jack looked up at her. There was something about the way he stared at her, like he wanted to say something, but he wasn't sure how to. "Can I ask you something?" He finally spoke, his voice almost a whisper. Emma froze for a moment. It wasn't like him to speak up. "Sure," she said, turning toward him. "What's it like?" he asked. "What's what like?" Emma responded, puzzled. "Living in a world where people expect you to have everything figured out, where nothing ever seems to go wrong." Emma blinked. She hadn't expected that. "You think I have everything figured out?" she asked with a slight laugh. He nodded, as if that was the truth he had come to believe. But Emma didn't see it that way. "You've got to be kidding me," she said, shaking her head. "We're all just trying to survive. None of us have it all figured out. We're all just doing the best we can." Jack looked at her, his gaze softening. "Yeah," he murmured. "Maybe you're right." But was he? Was he really just a man like everyone else? Or was there more to this? And why did he feel the need to hide? Emma wasn't sure, but she would find out. The following days felt strangely still. The Velvet Lounge continued to be a place of fleeting conversations and the occasional laughter, but Jack's presence lingered in Emma's mind long after she left work. Every time she caught sight of him, sitting in his usual corner, looking lost in thought, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. Was he pretending to be something he wasn't? Or was there something more, something she had yet to uncover? The thought gnawed at her. It was Thursday now, and the bar was a little busier. Emma was managing multiple tables, keeping an eye on the ever-growing line at the bar. But no matter how busy the night got, her mind kept drifting back to Jack. He hadn't said much more since that cryptic conversation, and every time he looked at her, there was a flicker of something deeper, a kind of vulnerability that both intrigued and worried her. That evening, when Emma was wiping down the counter, Jack caught her eye again. This time there was a change. His posture was straighter, and though his clothes were still worn and old-fashioned, there was an undeniable shift in his demeanor. He wasn't slouched over his drink anymore. Instead, he appeared almost focused, intent. He motioned for her to come closer. She hesitated for a second, her curiosity pushing her forward. "Can I get a refill?" Jack asked quietly, his voice different this time, more composed. His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time since their encounter, Emma noticed something that made her heart race. It wasn't just a customer's request. It was a challenge. "Sure," she said, reaching for the bottle. "But you're looking a little different tonight. What's going on?" Jack's lips twitched, just barely. "I'm tired of pretending." Emma paused. What did that mean? Pretending. "Yeah." Jack's voice dropped low as he looked away, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. "Pretending that I'm not someone else. Pretending that this life is what I really want." Emma set the bottle down on the counter, feeling the weight of his words hang in the air. There was more to this man than she had first realized, more than she had let herself believe. She leaned in closer, her voice soft. You know, people come in here every day pretending to be something they're not, but you... She paused, trying to find the right words. You're different. You don't even try to hide it. You wear your truth like a mask. You don't care if we see it. Jack's eyes softened, the hardness he'd carried the past few days slipping away for a brief moment. Emma gave him a small smile. You don't have to pretend with me. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The room was alive with chatter, the music playing softly in the background. But in that moment, it felt like time had stopped. Jack wasn't the mysterious stranger he had been when he first walked in. He was someone broken, just like the rest of them. And for the first time in a while, Emma felt a connection to him. But just as the silence settled between them, the unexpected happened. A voice rang out from the other side of the bar. A man, well-dressed in a sleek black suit, was walking over with a smug grin on his face. His eyes locked onto Jack's, and the warmth that had briefly flickered in Jack's expression vanished in an instant. Well, well, look who's here, the man said, his tone dripping with condescension. Jack Harrison, the once great CEO, reduced to slumming it in a dive bar. How low can you go? Emma's eyes widened. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Jack's expression darkened as the man continued to approach, but he didn't move. He didn't even flinch. It was as if he was waiting for something to happen. Still pretending to be one of us, huh? The man said, sneering. Tell me, Jack, how long are you going to keep playing this game? Jack's lips tightened. I'm not playing any game. The man laughed, shaking his head. Oh, I'm sure you're not. It's just pathetic, though, seeing you here. The great Jack Harrison, the one who built an empire. Now you're drinking your life away, just like the rest of the nobodies. How's it feel to hit rock bottom? Emma's mind was racing, trying to process what was happening. Jack Harrison. The name clicked in her head. He was a tech mogul, one of the wealthiest men in the country, once worth billions. But what was he doing here, pretending to be broke? Jack didn't say anything for a moment. He just stared at the man in front of him. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, Jack stood up. He wasn't as tall as the man, but there was a cold authority in the way he held himself now. The vulnerability he had shown just moments before was gone. Leave, Jack said, his voice steady but firm. You don't belong here. The man's grin faltered for a moment, but then it returned, sharper this time. You think you can just tell me to leave? After everything I've done for you? You're nothing, Jack. Nothing anymore. Emma watched, stunned, as the two men faced off. The tension in the air was thick, the room suddenly quieter, as people began to notice the confrontation. The man was clearly trying to provoke Jack, to get under his skin. But Jack wasn't backing down. For a moment, Emma thought it would escalate into something worse. But then Jack did something that left everyone in the bar frozen in their seats. Without warning, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick stack of cash. He slammed it down on the counter, sliding it toward the man. The bills fluttered, and the sound echoed in the quiet room. Take it, Jack said, his voice cold. Take your money and get out. The man stared at the cash, his face red with anger. He didn't move, didn't reach for the money. Instead, he shot Jack one last, venomous glare before turning on his heel and storming out of the bar. The tension didn't immediately leave. The room remained silent, the air heavy with questions. Emma stood there, looking at Jack, unsure of what to say or do. He was still standing by the counter, his hand gripping the edge. But there was a flicker of something else in his eyes now. A flicker of something Emma couldn't quite place. He wasn't just playing a role anymore. He was Jack Harrison, the man who had lost everything. And yet, something about that moment made Emma realize she had only scratched the surface of the story. The bar was still, the silence hanging in the air long after the confrontation. Jack stood there, watching the pile of cash he had thrown on the counter. Emma could feel the weight of the moment, the tension slowly dissipating, but something still lingered, something unspoken. She looked at Jack, trying to understand him. He had just shown a side of himself she hadn't expected. The cold, hard edge of a man who had everything, lost it, and now stood in front of her, pretending to be someone he wasn't. Or was he? Could he still be the billionaire Jack Harrison despite the act? For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. She had seen a lot in her time at the Velvet Lounge, but nothing quite like this. A man who had once been at the top, reduced to sitting in a corner, hiding in plain sight, surrounded by people who had no idea who he was. Jack didn't speak immediately either. He just stood there, his eyes locked on the cash that was still scattered across the bar, the remnants of the moment that had shaken everyone in the room. His fingers twitched, and Emma noticed how his jaw was clenched, how his muscles were tight, like he was fighting something inside. She was about to speak, to ask him what was going on, when he finally broke the silence. "Why do you stay here, Emma?" His voice was almost a whisper, raw and vulnerable in a way that caught her off guard. She blinked, taken aback. "What do you mean?" He glanced at her briefly before returning his gaze to the counter. "You could be anywhere, doing anything. You could be living a life that most people dream of. But you're here, working in a bar, talking to people like me." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting this. She had always assumed her life was just normal. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She didn't mind the hard work, the long hours. It gave her purpose. "I'm here because I want to be," she replied, her voice steady, though a little unsure. "I may not have a lot, but I have enough. And I've got a roof over my head. That's enough for me." Jack looked at her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You really believe that, don't you?" he said quietly. "You think that being okay with enough is all you need?" Emma frowned, a little defensive now. "What's wrong with being content?" "Nothing at all," Jack said quickly, as if realizing he had hit a nerve. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad. It's just, I don't know anymore. I thought I had everything. I thought I had all the answers." Emma couldn't help but soften. She had seen that look before, in the eyes of people who had tried so hard to climb up, only to find that the top wasn't what they expected. It was a lonely, painful place. Jack's fingers tapped the counter in an erratic rhythm, and for a moment, Emma could see the cracks in his facade. The billionaire CEO, the man who had built an empire, he wasn't just hiding behind his disguise, he was running from something. Before she could ask more, a figure stepped into the bar, breaking the fragile moment between them. The door swung open, letting in a gust of cold air and the sharp scent of the city outside. Emma didn't need to look up to know who it was. It was Mary, one of the regulars. But this time, something felt off. Mary's face was pale, her eyes wide with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Is everything okay in here?" Mary asked, her voice laced with worry. Emma gave her a reassuring smile, trying to shake off the tension in the air. "Yeah, just a little misunderstanding. Nothing to worry about." But Mary wasn't convinced. She glanced at Jack, who was still standing there, his hands clenched at his sides, his posture rigid. Mary's eyes lingered on him for a moment before she shifted her gaze back to Emma. "I thought I heard something," Mary said quietly. "There was yelling, right?" Emma glanced at Jack, unsure of how to answer. He hadn't spoken in what felt like forever. She was beginning to realize just how deep the man's pain ran. Maybe he wasn't pretending after all. Maybe he was just lost. Before Emma could respond, Jack spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "You can go, Mary. I'm done here." Mary's eyebrows furrowed in confusion, but she didn't push him. She simply nodded and walked away, leaving the air thick with unanswered questions. Jack turned back to Emma, his gaze now more focused than before. "I didn't want to drag anyone else into this. I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me." Emma nodded slowly, her mind racing with questions. But she wasn't sure if she was ready to hear the truth just yet. "What do you want, Jack?" she asked, her voice soft but firm. "What do you want from all of this?" Jack didn't answer immediately. He took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to speak. "I don't know anymore," he muttered. "I don't know what I'm supposed to want. what I'm supposed to do. I thought I had it all figured out, but he trailed off. And Emma could feel the weight of his words, the sense of helplessness that hung over him like a cloud. Sometimes the only thing you can do is keep moving forward, Emma said gently, offering him a small, reassuring smile, even when it's hard. Jack looked at her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she thought he might say something else, but he just nodded. Yeah, he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. Maybe you're right. Emma didn't know what Jack's next move would be, but she knew one thing. He wasn't the man he had once been. There was no hiding the pain in his eyes anymore. He had fallen, and now it was unclear whether he could rise again. Before she could say anything else, the door opened once more, this time letting in a figure she didn't expect. A tall woman with sharp features and a commanding presence walked into the bar. Her eyes locked onto Jack, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. It was clear that she knew him, but who was she, and what was her connection to Jack? The air in the bar shifted once again as the tall woman stepped forward, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Her presence was commanding, and Emma could feel the tension in the room rise as she approached Jack's side of the bar. The woman's eyes never left Jack, her gaze intense, as if she had come for something important. She was dressed in a tailored black coat, her dark hair slicked back into a neat ponytail. She had the look of someone who didn't waste time, someone who was used to getting what they wanted. Jack stiffened the moment she walked in. He hadn't seen her in years. But there was no mistaking who she was. Emma could sense the shift in him, the way his posture tensed, as if he was bracing for something. The woman didn't speak immediately. She simply stood there, watching Jack with an unreadable expression. The silence between them felt heavy, like an old wound reopening. Jack's face remained neutral, but Emma could see the flicker of something deeper in his eyes. Fear, regret, maybe even anger. Finally, the woman spoke. Her voice was smooth, but there was an undeniable edge to it. "Jack," she said, her tone cold, almost clinical. "It's been a long time." Emma could feel her heart race as she watched the exchange. The tension between them was palpable. What was going on here? Who was this woman? And why did she have this effect on Jack? Jack didn't immediately respond. Instead, he took a slow, deliberate sip from his drink, as if trying to steady himself. Emma noticed his hand tremble slightly as he put the glass back down. "It has," Jack replied, his voice low and guarded. "What do you want?" The woman's lips curled into a small, knowing smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I think you know why I'm here," she said. "You've been hiding long enough. It's time to face the consequences." The words hung in the air, and Emma's mind raced. Consequences? What was she talking about? And why was she speaking to Jack like this? Emma stepped closer, her curiosity overwhelming her need to stay out of it. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman turned her gaze to Emma for the first time, and there was something unnervingly calculating in her eyes. "Stay out of this," she said firmly, her voice a warning. Emma recoiled slightly, the sharpness in her tone taking her by surprise. She glanced at Jack, who seemed to be caught in a conflict, caught between two worlds, two lives that he couldn't reconcile. "I'm not staying out of it," Emma said, her voice steady now. "You don't get to walk in here and act like you own the place. Who are you?" The woman studied her for a moment, her gaze calculating, before she finally spoke again. "I'm someone who used to be part of Jack's world. A world that's long gone." Jack winced at her words, and Emma could see the pain flash across his face. It was like a brief crack in his hardened exterior, a glimpse of the man he used to be, a man who had once ruled his empire with confidence and control. "And now?" Emma pressed, her curiosity burning. "What do you want from him?" The woman's smile faltered for a moment, and her eyes hardened. "I want him to pay for the mistakes he's made, the damage he's caused." Jack's face twisted, a mixture of guilt and anger crossing his features. "I've paid," he muttered. "I've paid enough." But the woman wasn't having it. She leaned in, her voice low but cutting. You haven't paid nearly enough. The people you betrayed haven't forgotten, and neither have I. Jack's eyes flashed with something dark, but he didn't speak. Emma could feel the weight of the words between them, the history that had clearly been left unresolved. It was a history Jack had been running from, trying to bury, pretending to be someone else. But now, it was all coming back to haunt him. Emma didn't know who this woman was, but she could see that Jack was terrified of her. And whatever she wanted from him, it was clear that it was not going to be easy for him to face. Who are you to judge me? Jack finally spoke, his voice shaky but defiant. You don't know what it's been like. Losing everything. The woman's face softened, but only slightly. She seemed to consider his words before responding. You don't get to hide behind that excuse anymore. You've built yourself a new life, haven't you? She said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. How's that working for you? Jack's jaw clenched at her words. He was trying to remain calm, but Emma could see the storm building inside him. She could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface, the raw emotion he was trying to suppress. I didn't come here to argue with you, the woman said, her tone shifting. I came here to give you one last chance to make things right. Emma's head spun. What did that even mean? What kind of chance was she talking about? And why was she giving Jack another opportunity? Hadn't he already lost everything? Make things right, Jack repeated, his voice thick with disbelief. What do you want from me? I've got nothing left to give. The woman's eyes narrowed, and Emma could feel the atmosphere shift. There was a power in her gaze, a sense of control that Jack seemed to be losing. You may think you have nothing left, the woman said, her voice growing colder. But I know what you're really hiding, Jack. I know the truth, and I'm not leaving until you face it. Jack swallowed hard, and for the first time, Emma saw the fear in his eyes. The billionaire who had once owned the world, who had once been untouchable, was now being confronted with a truth he couldn't escape. The woman turned to leave, but before she did, she dropped one final bombshell. You're running out of time, she said, her voice a whisper of a threat. The clock's ticking, Jack. You can't hide forever. With that, she walked out of the bar, leaving Emma standing there, stunned. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, his hands trembling, his face pale. Emma felt a wave of sympathy for him, but it was mixed with confusion. What had just happened? What was Jack hiding? And why was this woman so intent on dragging him back into his past? The woman's departure left an eerie silence in her wake, and it felt like the whole bar held its breath, waiting for something to break the tension. Emma stood there, staring at Jack, who was now hunched over the bar, his face hidden in his hands. She wanted to say something, anything to break the silence, but her words caught in her throat. What could she say? The man had been a shell of himself, pretending to be someone he wasn't, but now she knew something much darker lingered beneath the surface. Something from his past, and whatever it was, it had the power to destroy him all over again. Emma took a tentative step toward him, unsure of how to approach the situation. She had never seen him like this before. He wasn't the man who had been hiding behind his mask of humility. He wasn't the Jack Harrison everyone else knew, the tech mogul, the billionaire, the man who seemed untouchable. Now, he was just a man broken by his own choices, a man who had lost everything. Jack? Emma's voice was soft, almost hesitant. He didn't respond at first. His shoulders were slumped, the weight of whatever was weighing him down too heavy for even the strongest of men to bear. He finally lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, as if he had been holding back the tears for far too long. I don't know if I can do this anymore, he muttered, his voice raw and vulnerable. I've been running for so long, running from my past, from the people I hurt, but I can't outrun it forever. Emma swallowed hard. She had suspected there was more to his story, but hearing it come from his lips, seeing the pain in his eyes, It was more than she had bargained for. "You don't have to do this alone, Jack," Emma said gently, leaning in slightly. "You've already made it this far. You can keep going, but you need to stop hiding from yourself." Jack let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to have everything, to be at the top and then lose it all. It's not just money. It's your identity, your place in the world. It's the people who depended on you, who trusted you. I betrayed them all. And now, there's no going back." His words hit Emma hard, and for a moment she couldn't speak. She thought about all the people who came into the Velvet Lounge. People who were running from their own lives, their own struggles. But none of them had faced anything like what Jack was describing. Losing everything wasn't just about money. It was about trust, reputation, family, the things that held you together when everything else fell apart. "Jack, whatever happened in the past, you can't let it define you," Emma said softly. "I know it's hard, but you can't keep punishing yourself for something you can't change." Jack looked at her, his eyes searching hers for something. Reassurance, maybe. Or maybe just the simple truth that he wasn't as alone as he thought. "I don't know what's next," Jack whispered. "I don't know what to do." "You take it one step at a time," Emma replied, her voice steady. "And you start by facing the truth, whatever that truth is. But you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to hide anymore." The words hung in the air for a moment, and Jack finally nodded. He wasn't entirely convinced, but something had shifted inside him. A small crack in the armor he had built around himself, letting a sliver of light in. But just as Emma thought she might get through to him, the door swung open again, this time with more force. The bell above the door jingled, announcing the arrival of another figure, a man wearing a dark, expensive suit. His presence was commanding, and his eyes immediately locked onto Jack, a look of recognition flickering across his face. Emma felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. Who was this now? Another person from Jack's past? Someone else coming to confront him? "Jack Harrison," the man said with a sharp, calculated tone, his voice deep and cold. "You've got some explaining to do." Jack's face went pale. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What are you doing here?" he demanded, his voice now strained with both anger and fear. The man didn't flinch. He simply stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Jack's. "I'm here to finish what was started. You can't run forever." Emma felt the tension rise in the room again. She glanced between the two men, trying to piece together the connection. Who was this guy, and why did he seem so familiar with Jack? "I don't have anything left to give you," Jack muttered, his hands trembling. "You've taken everything already." The man chuckled, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was cold, almost predatory. "You don't understand, Jack. You owe more than just money. You owe answers, and I'm here to collect." Jack stepped back, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and desperation. "I can't." "You can," the man interrupted, stepping even closer now, his voice low and dangerous. "And you will." The room felt like it was closing in. Emma could feel the weight of the situation, the danger, the unresolved conflict that seemed to swirl around them. Jack had made enemies, real ones. And now it was clear that those enemies weren't going away. "I don't want any more of this," Jack said, his voice barely a whisper, as though he was pleading. "I've paid my dues. I've lost everything." The man didn't respond. Instead, he simply turned, walking toward the door with a slow, deliberate pace. But before he left, he glanced back over his shoulder, locking eyes with Emma for the briefest moment. "This isn't over," he said, his voice almost a warning. And then he was gone. The tension in the bar slowly began to dissipate, but Emma felt as though she were holding her breath. Jack collapsed back into his chair, his face pale, his body slumped in exhaustion. "What was that?" Emma asked quietly, afraid of the answer. Jack didn't respond at first. He just sat there, his fingers gripping the edge of the counter, staring at the door where the man had just walked out. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. "That was someone from my past. Someone I've tried to forget.
But they're not going to let me go. Not until I face what I did. Emma's heart ached for him. She could see it now. The burden he had been carrying, the one he couldn't escape. "Jack," she said softly, "what happened? What did you do?" But Jack didn't answer. He just stared ahead, lost in thought, trapped by a past that was quickly catching up to him. The night grew colder, but the warmth inside the velvet lounge did little to ease the growing unease that wrapped itself around Emma. She stood at the bar, the tension thick in the air, and watched Jack as he sat, still stunned by the confrontation. The man who had walked in, so powerful, so commanding, had left a mark on him, one that was far deeper than she had realized. Jack wasn't the billionaire tech mogul that everyone assumed he was. Not anymore. Whatever legacy he had built, whatever empire he once controlled, seemed to be buried under layers of guilt, fear, and regret. Emma glanced over at the cash still lying in front of Jack, the bills that had slid across the bar just moments before. He had thrown them as if they were meaningless, but now she understood why. They weren't just money to him. They were a symbol of something he couldn't escape. "Jack," she said softly, stepping closer to him. Her voice was gentle, but there was an underlying urgency. "You need to tell me what's going on. This—" She gestured toward the empty space where the man had stood moments before. "This isn't just some business deal. This is personal. What happened?" Jack didn't meet her eyes at first. His gaze was fixed on the glass in front of him, but his fingers weren't tracing the edge of the cup anymore. They were fidgeting, trembling slightly. I can't," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's too late for me." "Jack, please," Emma insisted, her voice steady but filled with concern. "You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry this weight by yourself. Let me help." His eyes flickered toward her, and for a brief moment, Emma saw something fragile in his expression. It was like the walls he had built up were starting to crumble, piece by piece. He took a deep breath and finally spoke, his voice heavy with years of regret. "I was never meant to be here. In this bar, in this life. I was supposed to be more. I was supposed to change the world, not destroy it." Emma's heart sank as she listened to the words that poured out of him. There was so much pain in his voice, so much sorrow. "I had everything, a company worth billions, a reputation, power. But in my pursuit of more, I lost sight of what really mattered," Jack continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I made promises. I lied to people who trusted me. And when everything came crashing down, it wasn't just the money I lost. It was the trust, the loyalty, the people who believed in me." He paused, running his hands through his hair. "I betrayed them all. And now it's coming back to haunt me." Emma was quiet for a moment, processing everything he had just revealed. The Jack she had seen up until now was a man consumed by guilt, lost in his own failure. She had assumed he was just a rich man who had fallen from grace, but the truth was more complicated than that. "Jack, what did you do?" she asked again, her voice filled with concern. "What's the truth? Who's after you?" Jack's gaze dropped, and he finally met her eyes. "It's not just one person, Emma. It's a whole web of people. The investors, the board members, the ones I betrayed. They're all coming for me now. But the one who's leading them? The one who wants me to pay the most?" His eyes hardened. "It's her, Claire." Emma blinked in surprise. "Claire?" Jack nodded, his eyes filled with bitterness. "Claire Hargrove. She was my right hand, my partner. But I pushed her out when I realized she wasn't loyal enough for what I wanted. She wasn't willing to take the risks I was, and I thought I could replace her. That's where I made my mistake. She's the one pulling all the strings now." Claire Hargrove. The name echoed in Emma's mind. She had heard rumors about her before. She was ruthless, ambitious, and cold. A woman who had built her own empire, rising through the ranks with a reputation for getting what she wanted. But Emma hadn't realized how deeply she was connected to Jack's downfall. "You're telling me you betrayed Claire?"
Emma asked, her voice incredulous. Jack's expression darkened. I didn't just betray her. I crushed her. And now she wants me to pay for it. She's the one behind the people who've been haunting me. The ones who've been threatening me. She's the one who's been pulling the strings to make sure I never forget what I did. Emma's mind raced as she tried to piece together the puzzle. Claire Hargrove had been Jack's partner, but now she was his worst enemy. The woman who had once been by his side was the one who had orchestrated his downfall, ensuring that Jack would live in the shadow of his own mistakes forever. So what do you plan to do now? Emma asked, her voice shaking slightly. How are you going to stop her? Jack's eyes were filled with regret, but also a sense of determination. I don't know yet, but I can't keep running. I can't let her win. I have to fix this. I have to make things right before it's too late. The door to the Velvet Lounge opened again, and this time it wasn't Claire or anyone from Jack's past. It was a new figure, someone who had been there all along, but had remained in the background. It was a man in his late 40s, with graying hair and a solemn expression. He walked toward the bar with purpose, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Jack. I see you finally decided to face the music, the man said, his voice gravelly. Jack stood up slowly, his face pale. David. David nodded, his eyes hardening. It's time, Jack. We need to talk. Emma stood there, caught in the middle, unsure of what to make of this new development. Who was David, and why did Jack look so shaken by his presence? I told you this would happen, David said to Jack, his voice low and serious. You can't outrun your past forever. And Claire, she's not someone you can ignore. Jack's face darkened as he stepped closer to the bar, his fists clenching. I know that, he muttered, but I have to fix it. I have to fix everything I broke. David studied him for a moment, as if weighing his next words. It's not just about fixing it, Jack. It's about surviving it. And Claire, she's not the only one you're going to have to face. Emma was speechless, watching the exchange with growing concern. What was going on? What had Jack gotten himself into? And more importantly, how was he going to get out of it? The tension in the air grew thick, as if it were waiting for the breaking point. Emma stood still, absorbing the weight of the conversation she'd just overheard. David's arrival had shifted everything. There was a new sense of urgency now, one that made her feel like she was on the edge of something far bigger than she'd realized. Jack's face had gone from pale to grim as he exchanged words with David, but Emma could see the change in him. The man who had been wallowing in his own guilt and despair was gone. In his place stood someone who was determined to fight, to somehow claw his way out of the hole he had buried himself in. But there was also a sense of recklessness in his demeanor. He was on the edge, and she wasn't sure if he would fall or rise. I know this isn't easy for you, Jack, David said, his voice low but firm. But you need to stop pretending you're in control. You're not. Claire's got her claws in deep. She won't stop until you're destroyed. Jack's fists clenched again, and for a moment, he looked like he was about to explode. His anger was raw, but there was something else behind it. Something that Emma had only glimpsed in moments like this. Fear. I can't let her win, Jack muttered, more to himself than to David. I can't. But I don't know how to stop her. I've tried, David. I've tried everything. And she just keeps coming. David took a slow breath, studying Jack carefully. You have one shot left, Jack, but you need to act fast. You've been given a choice, whether you like it or not. Run, and you'll lose. Or fight, and you'll have a chance to win. But make no mistake, fighting Claire means taking on everything she's built, and that includes the people who will destroy you if you don't play her game. Emma's heart raced, her mind spinning with the gravity of the situation. It was clear now, Jack wasn't just some broken billionaire. He was a man caught in a web of deceit, betrayal, and ruthless ambition. Claire Hargrove, the woman who had once been his partner, was the spider at the center of it all. Jack looked back at Emma, his eyes almost pleading. I don't want to drag you into this, Emma, but you have to understand. If I don't do something, if I don't stop her, this will be my life now. Forever. Emma could feel the weight of his words, the burden of responsibility he had placed on himself. But she also understood now. It wasn't just about money or power. It was about redemption. Jack had to make things right, not for the world or the people who had betrayed him, but for himself. "I'm not going anywhere, Jack," Emma said, her voice steady despite the chaos swirling in her mind. "Whatever happens next, I'm here. You're not alone in this." Jack's expression softened, his defenses crumbling for just a moment. But then, his eyes darkened again as he turned back to David. "So, what's the plan?" Jack asked, his voice low and filled with resolve. "How do we fight back?" David looked at him, his gaze calculating, assessing. "You're not fighting Claire alone. You'll need to start by taking back what she stole. You need allies, people who can take her down from the inside. But you're going to have to get your hands dirty, Jack. There's no easy way out of this. You're going to have to make some hard decisions." Jack nodded, his jaw set, eyes burning with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." Emma watched as the two men spoke in hushed tones, planning their next move. It was clear that Jack was no longer the man who had fallen from grace. He had a fire in his eyes now, a drive that hadn't been there before. But that fire came at a cost. Fighting back against Claire would not be easy, and Jack would have to be prepared for the consequences. As the hours ticked by, the atmosphere in the Velvet Lounge shifted. The usual hum of chatter and laughter faded into the background as Emma, Jack, and David worked together, strategizing. They didn't have all the answers, but they had something more important: a plan. David finally stood up, his posture rigid as he prepared to leave. "This is it, Jack. The first step is crucial. You have to get close to Claire's people, the ones she trusts the most. You need to find a way to get them on your side, or they'll turn on you the moment they smell weakness." Jack didn't respond immediately. He was deep in thought, processing everything David had said. But then he stood up too, his eyes burning with an intensity Emma hadn't seen before. "Thanks for this, David," Jack said quietly, his voice filled with both gratitude and resolve. "You've given me the chance I need. Now, it's my turn to take control." David gave him a curt nod, but his expression was unreadable. "Don't screw this up, Jack. You only get one shot." As David left the bar, Emma turned to Jack, feeling the weight of everything that was happening. This was no longer just about saving his reputation. This was about surviving. And Jack Harrison was about to face the biggest challenge of his life. The next morning, Jack was already gone by the time Emma arrived at the Velvet Lounge for her shift. He had left a note for her, tucked under the edge of the bar. She unfolded it carefully, reading the words written in Jack's neat handwriting. "I'm going after her. I'll be back when it's over. Please, keep this place safe while I'm gone. I'll need your help more than ever." Her heart sank as she read the note. She didn't know what Jack was walking into, but she knew one thing for sure. This was the point of no return. He had made his choice, and now Emma was stuck between supporting him and the possibility that everything could fall apart. The bar was quieter than usual. Most of the regulars hadn't arrived yet, and Emma found herself lost in thought. What was Jack really up against? Who could he trust? And what did it mean for her? She didn't have answers, but one thing was clear. She couldn't sit back and do nothing. Jack had chosen to fight, and now she had to choose where she stood. It had been 2 days since Jack left without a word. The Velvet Lounge felt different now, empty almost. Emma kept herself busy, but her mind was never far from Jack or the note he had left behind. She had no idea where he had gone or what exactly he was planning. But whatever it was, she knew it would change everything. The people who had been watching Jack, the ones who had been waiting for him to slip, weren't just shadows anymore. They were moving pieces on a chessboard, and Jack was about to make his first real move. But with every step forward, the stakes grew higher. Emma didn't know what she was expecting when Jack came back, but she certainly wasn't expecting it to happen like this. The door to the bar swung open, and Emma looked up, expecting another regular. Instead, a familiar face stepped through the door, and her stomach dropped. It was Claire. She walked in with the same confidence she always had, but there was something different about her this time. There was no smile on her face, no warm greeting for the bar patrons. Instead, she moved with a purpose, heading straight for the counter. Her sharp, calculating eyes scanned the room, pausing when they landed on Emma. "Where's Jack?" Claire asked, her voice cold and demanding. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen Claire in years, not since the fall of Jack's company, and now here she was, standing in front of her with that same icy composure. The power in her presence was undeniable. "He's not here," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He's gone. What do you want with him?" Claire's lips curled into a small, amused smile. "He thinks he can escape. He thinks he can hide from what he's done. But you can't outrun your mistakes forever." Emma clenched her jaw. She didn't want to get involved in whatever game Claire was playing, but there was no denying that this was personal. She could feel the tension building, and Claire's presence only made it worse. "What happened between you two?" Emma asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. "What did Jack do to you?" Claire's eyes darkened, and for the first time, Emma saw something different in her. The slightest flicker of vulnerability. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Claire was a master at hiding her emotions. "You wouldn't understand," Claire said dismissively. "Jack betrayed me in ways you can't even imagine. He took everything I built with him, and now he thinks he can just walk away. But I won't let him get away with it." Emma took a step closer to the bar, her eyes narrowing. "You're not going to ruin his life just because he made a mistake." Claire let out a sharp laugh, her gaze icy. "A mistake? You think that's what this is? No, Emma. What Jack did to me, it wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated betrayal. And he's going to pay for it, one way or another." The tension between them thickened, and Emma felt her heart race. She was out of her depth. Claire was dangerous, and Emma knew that getting involved with her was like stepping into a storm. But she couldn't just stand by and let Jack's past destroy him completely. She had to know more, had to understand why Jack had done what he did. "I want to know what happened," Emma said, her voice firm. "I want to know why Jack did this to you. I want to know the truth." Claire studied her for a moment, as if weighing whether or not to speak. Then, without a word, she turned and walked toward the back of the bar, leaving Emma standing there, conflicted and uncertain. Minutes passed, and the silence of the room grew deafening. Emma stood at the counter, her mind racing. She didn't know if Claire was gone for good, or if this was just the beginning of something worse. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever Jack was up against, it wasn't going to end well. Just as she began to gather her thoughts, the door opened again. This time, it was Jack. His face was pale, his expression strained. His eyes met Emma's, and she could see the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, like he had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Jack didn't speak immediately. He just walked over to the counter and sat down, his eyes locking onto the empty space in front of him. Emma could see the storm brewing inside him, the conflict that had been tearing him apart. "You were right," Jack said quietly, breaking the silence. "I can't outrun this anymore. I thought I could fix things on my own, but I was wrong. Claire's right. I've betrayed everyone who trusted me. And now, it's too late to fix it." Emma's heart sank. "Jack, it's not too late. You can still make things right." He shook his head, his expression hardening. "No, I can't. The things I've done, they can't be undone. And Claire, she's just the beginning. There's more. People I've hurt. People who want me to suffer for what I did. They won't stop until I'm gone." Emma's throat tightened. She had seen Jack broken before, but now he seemed beyond repair. He was lost in his own regret, suffocating under the weight of his past. But then, just as Emma was about to speak again, a sound interrupted them. It was a phone ringing, sharp and insistent. Jack's phone. Without saying a word, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled it out, his eyes flickering as he saw the caller ID. His hand hesitated for a moment before he answered. "Jack," a voice on the other end of the line said, the tone cold and professional. "You've made your choice. Now you'll live with the consequences." It was Claire's voice. Jack's face drained of color, and for a moment, he was silent, listening to whatever Claire was telling him. His grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles white as he listened. "You don't scare me, Claire," Jack finally said, his voice low but defiant. "You're not going to break me, not this time." But Claire's voice came back, even colder. "We'll see about that." And then, the line went dead. Jack dropped the phone onto the counter, his face pale and set. "She's coming for me."
She's not going to stop until I'm finished. Emma felt her heart race. She knew the danger Jack was in, and she couldn't just stand by and watch him fall apart. But what could she do? The days blurred together for Jack. Each moment seemed to drag, each second weighed down by the tension that was suffocating him. Claire's words echoed in his mind, and the haunting calls from unknown numbers, those people he had wronged, the ones who wanted payback, continued to invade his thoughts. Everywhere he turned, there was a reminder of what he had lost. The velvet lounge felt like a sanctuary, a place where he could just breathe for a second. But that peace was fleeting, and Jack knew it. He couldn't hide here forever. He had already run too far, for too long, and now it was time to face the consequences. Emma watched him closely,
her gaze filled with concern. She had seen him break down before, but this time it was different. Jack wasn't just struggling with the past. He was standing at the edge of something much darker, a final reckoning. "Jack," Emma said softly, stepping closer to him. "You can't keep doing this. You can't keep carrying the weight of everything on your own. You have to make a choice." Jack's eyes met hers, his expression hollow. "I've already made my choice, Emma, but it's not one I can come back from." She shook her head, her voice firm. "You can still change, Jack. It's not too late to fix this. You don't have to let your past define you. You can take responsibility, but you can also move forward." Jack looked away, his face twisted with guilt. "I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't deserve a second chance." "You don't get to decide that for yourself," Emma replied, her voice soft but resolute. "Only the people you've hurt can decide that. But you can't give up without trying." He looked at her, his eyes searching. There was a flicker of hope, but it was quickly replaced by doubt. The damage was done, and Jack knew it. But Emma wouldn't let him go down this path alone. "Jack," she said, her tone gentle but insistent. "You've been running for so long, but you can't outrun yourself. You have to stop hiding from who you really are, who you could be." For the first time in days, Jack's shoulders relaxed. He let out a slow breath, the tension beginning to fade, if only for a moment. He had been running for so long, trying to outrun the ghosts of his past, trying to bury the man he used to be. But maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to rebuild, to redeem himself. "I don't know where to start," Jack whispered. "You start with the truth," Emma said softly. "You face the people you've hurt. You apologize. You own up to your mistakes. And then, you let go of the guilt that's holding you back." Jack nodded slowly, his mind racing with the weight of the decision before him. The path to redemption was long, but it wasn't impossible. It was going to take everything he had, but he could no longer run, not from Claire, not from his past, and not from himself. The door to the lounge opened, and Jack's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what was coming next. But there was no turning back now. Claire walked in, her expression as cold as ever. She had come to finish what she started. But Jack wasn't the same man she had left behind. "Jack," she said, her voice sharp as she approached the bar. "You've made your choice. Now, you'll pay the price." Jack met her gaze, his eyes steady, his resolve unwavering. "I'm done running, Claire. If you want to destroy me, go ahead. But I won't let you take everything from me again. I'll face the consequences of my actions. I won't hide anymore." Claire studied him for a long moment, her lips curling into a tight smile. For the first time, there was something unfamiliar in her eyes. Uncertainty, maybe even doubt. "You think you can fix this, after everything you've done?" She sneered, her voice dripping with contempt. "I don't know if I can fix everything," Jack replied, his voice calm but firm. "But I'm going to try." The silence that followed was thick with tension, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. But as Jack stood his ground, something seemed to shift. Claire's posture faltered, just slightly, and for the first time, Jack saw her not as the powerful woman who had once been his partner, but as someone just as broken as he was. "Jack," Claire began, her voice softer now, though still laced with anger. "You think you can change? You think you can come back from everything you've done?" "I have to try," Jack said, his voice steady. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm not running anymore. I'm not the man I was before, and I'm not going to let you destroy me or anyone else anymore." For a moment, Claire stood there, her expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, she turned away. "Do whatever you want, Jack," she said, her voice heavy with something close to resignation. "But don't think for a second that you'll ever escape what you've done." Jack watched her walk out of the bar, his heart pounding. The tension that had held him in its grip for so long seemed to lift, but he knew this wasn't over. Claire had given him a chance to prove himself, but there were others, people he had wronged, who would demand answers too. Emma stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with understanding. "You did the right thing, Jack. You faced it. You didn't run." Jack looked at her, his eyes softening for the first time in days. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Emma smiled, though there was still a hint of sadness in her eyes. "You don't have to do this alone, Jack. I'm not going anywhere." And as Jack looked at her, he finally felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. It wasn't a guarantee of redemption, but it was a step forward, one step at a time. The past might always haunt him, but Jack knew one thing for sure: he was no longer running, and that was the first step in rebuilding what he had lost.